Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz bassist, composer, and bandleader Fernando Huergo. We talked to him on June 19, 2020 about his new 2020 CD, The Possibility of Change, during the COVID-19 quarantine lockdown. He's originally from Argentina and made his way to Boston and the Berklee College of Music. He is a prolific cat on the modern-day music scene with 11 albums under his own name and 140 as a sideman. He's got great insights and stories. Enjoy.
I guess it's probably a good time to talk about the music. So, you have an album that came out during a pandemic, which obviously has to probably have mixed emotions to it. People have more latitude to listen, but you can't back it up. What are your feelings on releasing it now?
Well, obviously it was set before the pandemic hit and everything, but and I had to cancel 2 concerts that I had to show it, to present it, and but what are you gonna do? Hold it. You got to keep going. You got to go ahead, and eventually, maybe next year I will present it, with a big band. Now, imagine playing in the club with a big band. I think we're far away from that. So I think it's a mixed feeling, but it's you have to keep going and go and move forward.
Talk to me about the creative approach to this album. What was kind of your thoughts on and the way you went about this release?
This is I've done a lot of records, and a lot of them were from trios to quartet, quintet, sextet, but never a big band. After my last record, I was starting to write music again and trying them on gigs. And I said, well, I'm falling into a pattern here. I would like to push myself a little bit. So I started writing for a big band. I started studying, taking lessons, listening, digging scores and stuff in order to, push myself a little more and improve. And I have played in a lot of great bands as a bass player, as a sideman, with a lot of large ensembles, like with Guillermo Klein, with Pablo Bonedo, with the composers band here in Boston. So I always play with a lot of horns, and I love the sound, and the possibilities are enormous. So I decided to try to go for a big band project.
Well, you've had 11 albums to your credit. With each successive release, what are you looking to do? Is it to kind of capture what's going on at the time, or what are you trying to evolve? What's kind of your approach?
Well, I think both. I think if an artist or a creator or somebody who tries to make music, however you want to call it, is definitely this work should be a reflection of the time that he or she lives in. So I definitely hear the harmony is different than from 10 years ago that I'm using, and same with different elements of the music, which is a reflection of works that I'm listening to, different artists, different styles. And in order to, I think we're here if we're going to get deep and spiritual, trying to evolve and improve as artists and persons. So I think it's important to always try to evolve and improve and push ourselves to keep going, to keep growing.
The one thing about this COVID-19 world is that we all have a story about how we found out about it, how we realized that all of this music was going to come to a halt. And I know for jazz musicians, the amount of shows that you had to cancel has been pretty voluminous. So when in early to mid-March did you realize this was going to happen? Kind of what was your story of how you started finding out that things were going to shut down?
It's fun. I'm from Argentina, and I was visiting my parents in January, and I remember reading on the internet about China developing this serious virus, and I remember telling my parents, this is bad. This is going to hit us all. And they were like, nah, nothing is going to happen. There's no way. And it was like, there's this book by Garcia Marquez, great writer from Colombia. It's called The Chronic of an Announced Death. That's something slow that is coming, and it's going to hit you. And I kept following. In March, of course, that's when I got an email in February, actually, for one, I teach in a couple of universities here, and they say there's a chance that we may have to close all universities in Boston. And that I said, well, this is really, really serious. And I think there was like 1 or 2 cases known only. I thought this is going to hit us really hard, and it did.
You know, it's interesting. I remember back in, it was either November or December, they showed a picture of Beijing. Downtown was empty and the smog was going away, and that alarmed me. I clicked out of the story because it freaked me out so much. I'm like, if China has to vacate, you know,
right.
Beijing, one of the biggest metropolises, something's wrong. And then I even remember personally a friend of mine telling me back in February, you know, he got a note from the school district that said, this is our approach possibly if we do virtual learning. And I was like, oh no, that has to just be a precaution. So I think like anything, there was writing on the wall, but I think none of us have collectively ever seen this. I mean, there's been generations that have survived different things like wars and big events that have gone on, but I don't know, no one's really gone through a true pandemic that shut everything down for this long. So I don't think any of us knew how to approach anything like this.
I guess we're learning on the go every day, you know. It's I see it here with the colleges. You know, they're trying to plan. I mean, and I feel sorry for people, you know, here at Berklee College of Music and Northeastern University, that they're trying to figure out how it's going to be the fall. And one thing that the president of Berklee said is like, well, this is in 3 months. 3 months back, we were teaching and we were thinking not sure if we were going to come back from spring break, you know. And now, you know, the world changed so much in these 3 months, you know. So who knows what's going to happen in 2.5 months, you know. It's, I guess we're learning on the go. It's an everyday discovery.
Well, I think the thing that we all have to be mindful of, and hopefully that the top health people are mindful of it, and I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you, if we continue to sanitize ourselves to a point where we can't get like a simple earache or a simple sore throat, when everybody does come back into full force, it's going to be double or triple everything. I mean, it's not just going to be a pandemic, but there's got to be a level of us that builds up some kind of immunity, you know, and I think that's been my kind of thought on all of this, you know, because I know Sweden didn't have lockdowns, and, you know, they had some spikes in Stockholm because of density, but overall, I think there's levels of this where they were like, you know, we have to have people building up some level of immunity, not only to the possibility of a viral infection like COVID, but everything else. And if we don't release everybody, you know, it could be something that could really intensify into a weird point. So I think those are things that we need to be mindful of as we get ready to go back into the fall. And we're, quite frankly, for the mental health of even a lot of kids, I have young kids, teenagers, they really need to get back to some level of living, you know, and I think it's going to be very important for everybody to have that happen.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable anyway. I mean, you can't keep people in their houses forever, you know, so it's eventually it's going to happen, and I hope that they develop some kind of a vaccine soon, or some kind of, you know, medicine that mitigates the stuff, you know. I'm just concerned about, I mean, it is a pretty bad virus, you know. If some people, you know, suffer a lot, and it takes a very long time recovering from it, and some people, I mean, we don't know. I guess we're just learning about it every day and discovering things, but eventually, I think we have to develop some kind of immunity to it if there's no other way, or a vaccine, or both, you know. Yeah,
totally. I agree. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood in Argentina. Talk to me about, you know, how jazz became your life and what some of your influences were.
Well, I come from a very musical family, and my father was a great singer and plays guitar and piano, and my uncles, and so I grew up with music, and every weekend it's very common, you know. It was not a foreign thing to me. And he had a great record collection, so I heard a lot of music from Argentina, like tango and folk music, and also he loved Oscar Peterson and Wes Montgomery, and he loved Brazilian music. So I was very privileged in the sense of growing up with all this stuff that I kind of took for granted. So, so I was always listening to this stuff. In the house, music was always sounding, you know, so it was always on. So And yeah, eventually I started studying. My grandmother was a piano teacher, so I started studying the guitar, then the piano. There was a drum set, so I was playing the drum set a little bit. Eventually got into the bass. And one day Berklee came to Argentina to do a trip, and I went and I got a scholarship. I attended the summer course in Argentina, and then I got a scholarship, and then I came here to study, and I've been here since.
What about mentors? Like who are like direct mentors to you that really helped you quite a bit?
Well, many of my teachers here, I would say at Berklee. Well, there was one teacher in Argentina, Cesar Franov, a great bass player, and then I will say there was another harmony teacher, Chalela, was great. And here I studied with Oscar Stagnaro, Bruce Gertz at Berklee, Whit Brown, John Lockwood. And then we also took ensembles with George Garzon, Hal Crook. Great teachers, great musicians. And at NEC I studied a little bit, and I was lucky enough to be at the big band with George Russell and also at his small ensemble. So those people definitely mark, they were mentors, and they had a strong influence on me. But then an enormous variety of musicians, not only bass players, because some people say, well, what bass players do you like? I mean, I can name so many, but from every style of music, because I love jazz, but I love, funk and R&B and Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Cuban, Brazilian. I'm very curious about music, and I try to learn as much as I can. And so, and classical music, and so, I couldn't I could say some names, but it would take a very long time. I'm influenced by all kinds of music, I will say.
Talk to me a little bit about what do you like the best? Now we've had this time where we've been away from live music. Do you have any memories from being on stage or traveling that are really special to you that you think about during this time of not performing?
Well, I mean, sure. I miss touring. I miss traveling. I love traveling. I love playing. Yesterday I played a concert, a live stream, and it felt so good. To be next to a drummer and close to the piano player playing, and reacting to each other's playing, and with the Julia was playing flute, so it's wonderful. So I miss that a lot. As a bass player here in Boston, I work a lot with a lot of different people. I've never stopped working, like since I'm like maybe 20 years old. So for most of my life, I had gigs all the time, plus teaching and rehearsing and recording, and so this has been a really, really unique time in my life of 2 months with just at home and teaching online and doing some, recordings at home and things like that. So I really miss going to a gig, playing, sharing with music, with musicians. That's what I miss the most.
The one thing I didn't realize kind of before this quarantine is that there has been something that's been synonymous with musicians that's been called quarantine, where you were, kind of holed up and you would get ready for new material so that you could go out and tour with it and all of that. Is there going to be a different term after this now for that? I mean, I know that that's been kind of something that you've done. Is that something that you've done too in your life, where you've spent time indoors to get ready for new material or a tour?
So I don't understand.
Well, one musician said that he was in quarantine last year, kind of, and he was working on new material. So this year he was hoping to tour, and he can't do that now because we're in quarantine. Is that something that you've done before, or is this a brand new thing for you?
Well, I remember one time I was supposed to go, a really, really famous musician and like somebody I admire a lot asked me to go on tour, and I already was going on another tour. So what I had to cancel the other tour, I had to pay the other bass players plane ticket to do the tour, and the tour with this famous musician got canceled in 2008 because of the economic collapse. So that was the first time in my life that I had no gigs because I had to cancel everything. I lost money, and then I was for 2.5 weeks at home just teaching. So I worked a lot in music, and I wrote a suite that eventually we recorded in Paris, and we toured in Europe, but that was the only time where I was at home, and it was also because of this economic crisis of 2008. But that's the only time that I can remember. Never for this long, like 3 months at home, it's never like that.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you like the best about being a musician?
I think I love music, and being a musician allows me to play, to be in contact with other musicians, and I've been blessed with the chance to travel a lot and meet a lot of wonderful people. Musicians and people who like music, they tend to be very spiritual and fun and interesting people. So it's been great. And I think I'm very blessed for being a musician, for having the chance to work on music every day, either playing, teaching, writing, arranging, recording, composing. So it's I just love being a musician. I mean, and it's hard. Sometimes it's challenging. So like we know. So it's when somebody says that when you love what you do, you don't work every day. Actually, it's more like when you work of what you love, you work all the time. It's a lot of work. You have to keep going, but at the same time, I consider it a blessing to be a musician and to share music with people.
So what was the first live jazz show that you ever saw that made you think, man, this is something I would love to do?
Live, because I was in Argentina, there were not a lot of things. I remember there was a festival. Man, there was a festival that came to Argentina, and this is a short story. Jimmy Heath, it was playing in Argentina, and I already had a gig that night. So I went to the theater with my young brother, who was like maybe 11. I was like 18, and I stood by the soundcheck to hear them, and I say hi, and my brother, who was playing drums, he started playing with Akira Tana, the drummer, and they loved my brother, and they said, do you want to leave him with us? We're going to go eat, and then we're going to play. He's going to be with us, and then you pick him up after your gig. And I said, sure. So I went to my gig. I went back to the theater where Jimmy Heath was playing, and they were already done with Percy Heath on bass, all these legends, and they were with my brother. And after the gig, they said that they went to eat, and they were like having a great time, and they let him play, and the drummer gave him a lesson. And then Jimmy Heath comes to me with a bunch of $20 bills and says, and I said, what is this? This is for your brother, for drum lessons. And I said, no, I can't accept that. Thank you very much. Sure, no. But there you can see what a special person, what a wonderful human being Jimmy Heath was. And you can hear that on every note he plays on the saxophone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was wonderful. Why do you love jazz?
It's music. It's freedom. It's the chance to create, to play everything. You can never get bored. If you're bored, you're not playing it correctly. It's a chance of always find something different, better to play. So I love everything about jazz. I love the harmony. I love the improvisation. I love the swing. I love the blues. I think all popular music comes from jazz. I think it's unavoidable. I think if you want to learn music or contemporary music, you have to learn jazz.
So talk to me a little bit about the elders that you've been around. The Jimmy Heath story was wonderful, but talk to me about like when playing with people that have been around for a long time, whether they are legends or luminaries. What have you learned from the elder statesmen of jazz that you've held on to?
Yeah, so many people. I think I think the humility, it's very important. I think that some people don't see, when you see like a legend, after playing somebody that played in all major festivals, and they have, articles and things all over the place, and then he has to finish and carry his cymbals, and, there's no, in jazz, there's no roadies, there are no fancy things. They have to go drive 2 hours to their home and stuff for like a little gig, or play 4-hour gigs with like a meal and stuff. So I think I learned that the music career in jazz has ups and downs, but you do it for the love of the music. I think that's the most important thing, because you have to learn to be strong and onward always. I think that's the lesson that I learned from being on the road and playing with many masters. That's what I took. Also the love of the music. Music, if you love the music, that will keep you going always.
I think the thing about living through this time is looking at the silver linings. And when I think about the silver linings of going through this time of no live jazz, I always have asked musicians, how strong is jazz in either America or the world during a particular year? I've been doing this since 2011, and I always get a variety of really good answers, and most of them are overwhelmingly positive. But I don't think I ever have to ask that question again after asking it during COVID-19, because the amount of shows and gigs and clinics and engagements that one musician has had to cancel is unbelievable to me.
I had tours, recordings, everything was wiped out of my book. It's a unique time. Hopefully, we'll be only once in the lifetime. I really hope. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it's been very challenging. Yeah.
So when we do come out of the COVID-19 and we get back to life, and I know it's taboo to say normal. I'm not even getting near that word. But when we do get back and we start performing and the crowds start getting back, what do you hope that we collectively realize about this time away from live jazz, that we come back refreshed and we realize something new about the process? And that's for both the musician and the audience.
Well, I think that definitely it's the first thing for musicians is to don't take anything for granted. And I try not to. I've been, for example, when you're on the road and you're like in places like Italy or France or Turkey, and you're having a great meal, and man, it's this, you're being so privileged. It's such a blessing, that you get to experience those things and getting paid for it, for playing, for sharing your art, your music, go on stage and having a great set, standing next to wonderful musicians and creating music together. It's a gift, and don't ever take for granted a single gig, a single beat, And I think for audiences, I think they will realize what important live music is. I had my neighbor was telling me, like, they went to the restaurant, open up, but they went to the restaurant, but there's usually live music there. There was no live music, and they said that the whole experience was terrible because they always go for the food, but the music is an important part of the evening. I hope people realize how important it is that you have 3, 4, 5 guys there playing for you, and in your next room, and I think it's also very important for them to realize how important it is to have live music in their lives.
So my final question to you is this: everyone has a perception or a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one living your life. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Well, I don't think it really matters who I think I am. I can tell you who I'm trying to be, somebody who is a musician, who works hard, and who tries to be every day a better musician and a better person. Most of the time, I fail, but I keep going and I keep trying.
That's a great answer. Hey, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. Thank you for the music. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Joe. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Great to meet you.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Argentina, Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Fernando for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, Enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.